Question number 1. The usual price of a tennis racket is $120. During a sale, Joe bought the racket at a discount of 20%. How much did Joe pay for the racket? So the usual price is $120. So with 20% discount on usual price, that means we will just have 120 times 80%. This will give us $96. Okay, there you go, 96. Question number 2. Judy had a 1 meter long metal wire. She used some of it to form a square of sides 4s plus 3 centimeters and had 32 centimeters of wire left. What is the value of S? So total wire is equal to 1 meters, which is equal to 1 times 100, 100 centimeters. So total wire left is 32 centimeters. So total wire used is equal to 100 minus 32, and this will give us 68. So that means the total wire used to form a square is 68 centimeters, which also means that 4 sides is equal to 68 centimeters. One side is equal to 68 divided by 4, and this will give us 17 centimeters. Since one side in S is equal to 4s plus 3, therefore 4s plus 3 is equal to 17. Then 4s is equal to 17 minus 3, and this will give us 14. And then 1s will then be equal to 14 divided by 4, and this will give us 3.5 centimeters. Therefore, the answer for 1s or s is 3.5 centimeters. Question number 3. The sum of 3 different 3-digit numbers is 405. Of the 3 numbers, find the largest possible number. So first thing is, there's 3 digits, right? So 3-digit numbers is 405. So that means 1, 2, 3 plus 1, 2, 3 plus 1, 2, 3 digit is equal to 405. So of the 3 numbers, find the largest possible numbers. To get the largest possible numbers, we need to have the other 2 numbers to be the smallest possible numbers. Therefore, smallest 3-digit number will then be equal to 100. So this is the first smallest 3-digit. So the second smallest digit will be 101. Therefore, the largest possible number will then be equal to 405 minus 100 minus 101, and this will give us 204. Question number 4. Participants of a shooting contest must obtain at least a certain score in the first round to qualify for the second round. There were 150 participants in the first round, and the table shows the number of participants for each score. 60% of the participants did not qualify for the second round. From the table, what was the lowest score of the participant who qualified for the second round? So it says here 60% of the participants did not qualify for the second round, and that means we have the total of 150 participants part, yep, and that means percentage of participants who qualified for second round will then be equal to 100 minus 60. This will give us 40%. So that means number of participants who qualified for the second round will be 40% times 150, and this will be equal to 60. So for 60, we need to calculate from the highest score to the lowest score the total number of participants to see what's the lowest score. Okay, so 5 or more, we have 12. Okay, so we are pretty close. This will be a wrong. Okay, what about 4 or more, which will be 12 plus 25, which is equal to 37. So still not it. How about 3 or more, which is basically 23 plus or 37, or 12 plus 25 plus 23, which will be equal to 60. And the thing is that we have 60 over here. So therefore, the minimum score or the lowest score will then be 3, because there is a total of 60. Since there are 60 students who scored 3 or more. Therefore, the lowest score is 3. Or this means the 60th student scored 3 to qualify for the second round. So, yeah, 3 or more. Question 5. The figure below is made up of squares. Shade 3 more squares so the figure has a line of symmetry. So in a way, we need to guess what is the line of symmetry. So the simplest one is from top to bottom. That's what you see over here. And we need to add in at least 3. So in this case, let me draw the square. If you were to have the line of symmetry to be from top to bottom, or we call it vertical, we have 1 because this side, and then we have 2 because of this side. Oops, sorry, this is 1 here. My eyesight is a bit not that good, but okay. So basically we need to have 1 square apart, and then we have 1 square apart like this. Then for the third one, it will look something like this, where we have 2 squares apart. So one is here and the other one is here. Okay, so let me just put this as 1 square apart as well. Okay, are we finished with this? No, we still have a few more. So then that means we need to have 1 square apart, which means there is this and this. So this is 3 more than 3 squares, which that means this is not the correct line of symmetry. So this is wrong, huh? Okay, so let's go for the next one, which is left to right. So this should be the half. Reason on why is because we have 2.5 like this, and then we have another 2.5 like this. Okay, so let's add 1 square, which is like that. Then we have 2.5 over here as well. So that means we have to get another 2.5 like this. Okay, so this one is also correct. Then this is also correct, 1.5. And lastly, we have one more from this square over here to this square. So we need to just shade this part. So see over here, because the difference is this and this square. Do we have anything else? No. So the answer is this. We need to have 1, 2, and 3. And the line of symmetry is this one. Question 6. Mrs. Tan needs 21 pieces of ribbon, each of length 70 centimeters, to tie some presents. Ribbon is sold in rolls of 4.5 meters each. What is the least number of rolls that Mrs. Tan needs to buy? So, common mistake is you probably say, oh, we just have 21 times 70, and this will give us 1,470 centimeters. Then 4.5 meters equal to 450 meters. So, number of ribbons, it's basically, sorry, not 450 meters, but 450 centimeters. 1470 divided by 450, right? So, this is wrong, okay? Because this is wrong because the ribbons are not joined together, right? So the number of ribbons are not joined together. So the correct method, basically, one ribbon, okay, is equal to 4.5 meters, which equal to 450 centimeters. So number of 70 centimeters ribbon in one roll would then be equal to, so this one ribbon roll, or one roll, 450 divided by 7. And this will be equal to 6, sorry, this is 70, yeah? So 6, and then we have dot, or we just round 6. So if there are 6 ribbons in one roll, then how about 21 ribbons? This is basically 21 divided by 6. And this will be equal to 3.5. Okay, but we need to round it to 4. Okay, so earlier why we round, so this 6.4 to 8 we need to round is because we only can cut 6 ribbons that are fully 70 centimeters. And for 21 ribbons, why we don't use 3 but instead of 4 is because the remaining ribbons, right, the 0.5 or yeah, 0.5 over here, ribbons, we need to use another row. Or see over here. Or the remaining row, which is 0.5, can't be used to cut the ribbons because the 70 centimeters we cannot cut into half. We need the full 70 centimeters. Therefore, we have to buy another, buy another one. So therefore, the answer is 4. Question 7. The figure is made up of 5 identical rectangles. Find the area of the figure. So for this kind of question, what we need to do is we need to identify the length and breadth for each rectangle. So for this, we have the length. I'm gonna write here length. And we also have the breadth over here. So I want to use short form. So let L be length and let B be breadth. So this will be L and this will be B. So with this, we actually can create equations based on this. So over here, we know that this is 17 centimeters, which has one length, two length, and one more breadth. What we see over here. So we can write the equation 2L plus B is equal to 17 centimeters. What about this 4 centimeters? If you look closely, this is also a breadth over here. But this 4 centimeters, what is it? It's basically the length minus the breadth. So this 4 centimeters is just minus L minus B lah, right? So L minus B is equal to 4 centimeters. So how do we then continue from this? Okay. So for L minus B, we can actually just say L is equal to 4 plus B, right? Because if you were to put this into the equation, minus B, and this will then be equal to minus B as well. So it's basically 4 centimeters plus, plus B, not minus, plus B, and this is plus B. So I will call this equation 3, equation 2, and this is equation 1. Therefore, we swap in equation 3 to equation 1. So that means the L is equal to 4 centimeters plus B, right? So 2L plus B, that means this will be 2 times bracket 4 plus B equal to 17. So 2 times 4, so basically 2 times 4 plus 2 times B plus B equal to 17. So this will be 8 plus 2B plus B equal to 17. Then 8 plus 3B is equal to 17. So if we were to simplify to 3B, that means we minus 8 from both sides. So 17 minus 8, this will then be equal to 9. So 1B is equal to 9 divided by 3. This will be 3 centimeters. So now we know what is B. Can we find L? Yes, we can, right? So for L is basically 4 plus B, which will then be equal to 4 plus 3 equal to 7. So that means the area of the rectangles is equal to length times breadth. Since we know the length is equal to 7 and the breadth is equal to 3, then that means this is 21 centimeters square. Since we have 5 identical rectangles, so 5 area of the rectangles is equal to 5 times 21. This will give us 105 centimeter square. So therefore, the answer is 105 centimeter square. Question 8a. The graph below shows the number of books borrowed by the pupils in a school from January to May. What was the average number of books borrowed per month from January to May? So when you see a graph, first thing first is we need to find out how many is one gap over here. So let's zoom it in. So you'll see there is one gap in red, okay, and one gap and then two gaps. So that means two gaps over here will be 150. One gap is equal to 150 divided by 2. This will then be equal to 75. So now we know what is one gap. We can calculate each of the different month. So for January, pretty straightforward. January is 300. And then for February over here, let's draw it out like this. So February, make it red. It's in the middle. So February will be 300 plus 75, 375. What about March? So we're looking until May, right? So March over here will be equal to 600. Then next one is April. So April over here is one gap below 600. So 600 minus 75 or 450 plus 75 is equal to 525. And lastly for May, let's see, May over here is just above 750. We put this in green. So 1 above 750 would then be equal to 825. So we now just need to add everything up. So average is equal to total divided by number of months. In this case, so average. So the total will just be everything added. So 300 plus 375 plus 600 plus 525 plus 825, and then we divide it by number of months. This is 5, and that will be equal to 525. All right. So for part B, what was the percentage increase in the number of books borrowed from February to March? So from February to March is 375 to 600. So how do we get the percentage increase? So percentage increase is basically difference divided by February times 100%. Okay, so what's the difference? Basically 600 minus 375 divided by 375 times 100%. And this will give us 60%. So there you go. So that's the answer, 60%. Question 9a. In the figure, ACDE is a trapezium and AC is parallel to ED. AC and FD are straight lines. BG is equal to FG. Angle GDE is 68 degrees and angle ABD is 71 degrees and angle BCD is 36 degrees. Find angle BDC. So for angle BDC, which is the red angle over here, which kind of shape is it part of? So if you were to guess the triangle BDC, that's what we see over here, then you are right. So that means angle BDC in red is equal to 180 minus 36 minus, there is another angle that we need to find out. If you guess what other angle we need to find out? If you guess the angle DBC, let me highlight it in a different color, which is this green angle, then you're right. So angle DBC in green. So how do you find angle DBC? Angle DBC is basically this part over here. It is part of a straight line. And we know that this is 71 degrees. So that means 180 minus 71, which is equal to 109 degrees. Okay. So this is angle in straight line. Therefore, for angle BDC in red, we just have to minus 180 minus 36 minus 109. And then this will give us 35 degrees. Okay, there you go. So the answer is 35. Question 9b. In the figure, ACDE is a trapezium and AC is parallel to ED. AC and FD are straight lines. BG and BG is equal to FG. GDE and angle GDE is 68 degrees and angle ABD is 71 degrees. Angle BCD is 36 degrees. Find angle BFD. Okay, for question 9b. Okay, so in this case over here, we need to find the angle BFD, which is in red. So can you find out angle BFD? Which shape is it part of? So if you were to guess, BFD over here is part of this isosceles triangle or isosceles triangle, then you're right. So that means BFD over here is also the same as this angle. So that means to get angle BFD is equal to 180 minus, so what angle do we need to know next? If you guess angle BGF, which is this green angle over here, then you're right. So we have 180 minus angle BGF divided by 2. So BGF is in red. So I'm going to put another brackets. In green, I mean. So for BGF over here, how do we get BGF? So there are two ways. Okay, the first way is we can get this other angle, right, which is in blue, right? Or we can find another way to get BGF. So remember that ACDE is a trapezium and AC is parallel to ED. So AC over here, let me draw the line. AC over here is parallel to ED, right? And the thing is that there are two straight lines as well, which is FD as well. So I'm going to draw another two line over here. Okay, so this is parallel, this is parallel. So can you see something that we can find the angle or BGF, which is in green? If you guess that since this two blue lines over here is straight lines, that means this is an opposite angle. So this over here, BGF, is also the same as angle AGD, right? So angle AGD is equal to angle BGF. Reason is because they are opposite angles, are the same. What they call it, vertically opposite angles are the same. So can we find angle AGD? Since AG is parallel to ED, that means angle AGD plus angle EDG is equal to 180 degrees because adjacent angles total to 180 degrees in a trapezium. So in essence, AG is parallel to ED, which means AGDE is a trapezium. That means, yeah, AGD. Okay, so AGD and EDG is 180. So that means AGD over here, since we know EDG is 68 degrees, therefore AGD is equal to 180 minus EDG, or 68 degrees, and this will give us 112 degrees. Since we know AGD is 112 degrees, that means BGF is also 112 degrees. Since we know BGF is 112 degrees, therefore we can get BFD, which is equal to 180 minus 112 divided by 2, and this will give us 34 degrees. There you go. So the answer is 34 degrees. Question 10a. The bar graph from the shows the number of 4 different brands of pants sold at the shop. 560 pants were sold altogether. Part of the graph was torn off. The prices of each brand is shown below. The number of pants sold from brand C was 3/5 of the pants sold from brand D. The total amount collected from the sales of pants from brand C and brand D was $620. How many brand C pants were sold? So when it says here, the number of pants sold for brand C was 3/5 the number of pants sold from brand D. So that means one group is equal to, or in this case, like brand C, how many pants? Roughly 3 pants. Brand D, how many pants? 5 pants. Okay, so that means one group would then be equal to 3 plus 5 equal to 8 pants. So we see over here. All right. So this is what it means, 3/5. So brand C is 3/5, so it's 3 out of 5. Brand D is the denominator. Okay, so we want to find the price for this. So one group of brand C is 3 pence. And one group of brand D is 5 pence. So one group of brand C cost will then be 3 pence. So C is 250, 2.5. That means this will be equal to $7.50. So what about one group of brand D cost is 5 pence? Cost brand D 160. So that means it's 5 times 1.6. This will give us $8. So one group cost of brand C plus D is equal to 7.5 plus 8. This will give us $15.50. So since we know one group cost is 15.50, 50 number of groups will then be equal to total. So total cost of brand C plus D from the question is $6.20. The number of groups is basically total cost of brand C plus brand D divided by one group cost of brand C divided by one group cost of brand C plus D, which in this case is equal to 620 divided by 15.50. And what will this be equal to? This will be equal to 40 groups. So we know that one group has how many brand C pens? So one group has 3 brand C pens. So that means 40 groups will then be equal to 3 times 40. And this will give us 120 brand C pens. There you go. So the answer is 120. So question 10b. So it is from 10a, right? So for question 10b, the only thing that we're concerned of is how many brand B pens were sold. So you can just go through on the 10 part A. Then after that, since we know there is a total of 120 brand C pens, so that means also for 40 groups over here, we also can get the brand D pens as well, which is 5. So 40 groups will be 5 times 40. This will give us 200 brand D pens. And lastly, since we want to get how many brand B pens were sold, we actually can get brand A. So we want to find out the number of gaps over here. So the number of gaps, if you were to look closely, is we have one gap over here. So let me use a line. Okay, we have one gap, two gaps, 3 and 4. So from the graph, dot, 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 4 gaps equal to 40. One gap is equal to 40 divided by 4. This will give us 10. So for brand A over here, how many pens do we have in total? In this case, it is 80 plus 2 gaps, which is 100. So that means for brand A, we have a total of 100 pens. So, oops, brand A is 100. Therefore, brand B would then be equal to total minus A minus C minus D. So total is 560 minus brand A is 100, C is 120, D is 200, and this will give us 140. There you go. So brand B is equal to 140. Question 11a. The figure below is made up of two identical squares and three triangles. EH is parallel to FG. Angle EHG equal to 128 degrees and angle EFG is 78 degrees. Find angle CBH. Alright, so angle CBH is in this red line over here. And we also know that these two squares is essentially, these are just the two squares that we know of. So first thing first, how do we then get angle CBH? Which shape is it part of? To simply show you, it's actually just part of this triangle. Alright, so now the next thing that might be a bit hard for you to see is what type of triangle is CBH? So the thing is that we have two squares over here. So the two squares have equal sides. So CDEH is a square. So that means all sides are the same. Then about ABHG square has equal sides as well. So all sides are the same. Now, can you see what BCH, what kind of triangle is it? Since BH and CH are from the same squares, that means BCH is an isosceles triangle. So since BCH is an isosceles triangle, therefore angle CBH is basically 180 minus what angle? Angle CHB. Let me put it in green over here. So we need to find angle CBH. CHB in green. And then we need to divide it by 2. So we need to find angle CH, not G, CHB. So how do you find angle CHB? What is it part of? So earlier, we mentioned that these are squares and these are squares as well. With the zoom it in, does that mean this is a right angle and this is also a right angle? So does that mean we can find angle CHB? Yes, we can. So angle CHB is basically 360 minus 128 minus 90 minus 90, and this will be equal to 52 degrees. Since we know angle CHB is 52 degrees, then we can find out angle CBH. Angle CBH over here will then be equal to 180 minus 52 divided by 2, and this will give us 64 degrees. There you go. So CBH is 64 degrees. Question 11b. The figure below is made up of two identical squares and three triangles. EH is parallel to FG, angle EHG 128 and EFG 78 degrees. Find angle GEF. So you can see angle GEF over here is this red angle. So angle GEF is in red. So what shape is angle GEF part of? So if you were to say this triangle over here, then you're right. So the other angle that we need to look for is this angle EGF. So it's essentially 180 minus 78 minus angle EGF, which is in green. So how do we get angle EGF? So angle EGF is basically equal to this big angle, HGF. So angle HGF, which is in purple. And then we minus this angle HGE, which is in blue. Make a sense? Yes. All right. So how do we get angle HGF in purple? Pretty straightforward. It is essentially 180 minus 128. This will give us 52 degrees. What you see over here, because adjacent angles in trapezium totals to 180. So now we know HGF, which is 52 over here. Then how do we get this blue angle? So to get that blue angle, we need to figure out which part of the triangle it is. So if you were to guess that this blue angle over here is part of this triangle HGE over here, then you are right. But what kind of triangle do you think HGE is? So the thing is that we know from the question that there are two identical squares, as what you see highlighted in orange. And the thing about squares is that they have the same sides. Same goes with the other square. Now, can you see what type of triangle HGE is? If you guess isosceles, you are right. So since HG and HE is part of the same identical squares, that means HG is equal to HE. Therefore, triangle JC is an isosceles triangle, which means we can get angle HGE, which is 180 minus 128 divided by 2, which is equal to 26 degrees. Since we know HGE is 26, that means we can find the green angle EGF, which is basically 52 minus 26, and this will give us 26 degrees. Since we know EGF is 26 degrees, then we can find angle GEF, which is basically 180 minus 78 minus 26, and this will give us 76 degrees. There you go. So the answer is 76 degrees. Question 13a. The graphs below show the cost of sending packages to Indonesia for the first 10 kg by two courier companies. How much does it cost to courier a package for the first 2 kilograms when using companies A's services? So let's zoom in, company A. So for the first 2 kilograms over here, we just want to grab it. That's what you see over here. Okay, so we also need to find the gaps, right? So we have one gap over here and then another gap, over here as well. So 2 gaps is equal to 2. 1 gap is equal to 2 divided by 2. This will give us 1. So that means for 2 over here, it is in between 4 and 6, which means this is, so 2 kg is basically $5. There you go. So for part B, Adele used company B service and paid $9 for her package. What was the mass of her package? So let's zoom into company B, and she said that the package cost her $9. So we just go and see the cost of $9, and then we just trace it down. From here, it's pretty straightforward. So dollars or company B, $9 is 3 kg. There you go. So it's 3 kg. Right, for question 13c, Yanti and Dewey each sent a 8.7 kg package to Indonesia. Yanti used companies A while Dewey used companies B. What is the difference in the amount they paid? So let's zoom into company A. We know earlier from the first question is that 2 gaps is equal to, or no need the 2 gaps actually. Okay, so from here, we know that from 4 kg over here, it is $12. And then from 10 over here, it's $18. So for company A, so I'm going to put here company A. So from 4 kg, it is $12. And then from 10 kg, or 10 kg, it's not from, but it's 10 kg, $18. So that means the difference in weight, because we want to find the individual weight. So difference in weight equal to 10 minus 4, and this will be equal to 6. And then for The difference in cost would then be equal to 18 minus 12 is equal to 6. So after 4 kg, the rates will then be 6 divided by 6, which equals to dollars 1 per kg. Okay, since we know 4 kg is what do you call this? $12 over here. So 8.7 kg is equal to 4 kg, or the first 4 kg plus 4.7 kg. The first 4 kg would then be equal to dollars 12. Then the second 4.7 kg would then be equal to 4.7 times dollars 1 equal to dollars 4.7. Therefore, 8.7 kg parcel in company A is equal to 12 plus 4.7. This will give us $16.7. $16.70. Okay, so this is company A. So what about company B? So company B, if you were to look down, is consistent. So for 8.7 kg, basically after the fifth kg, which I'm going to highlight it in red over here, is just $15. So after 5 kg, it will always be $15. So therefore, 8.7 kg in company B would then be equal to $15. So that means the difference is equal to 16.7 minus 15 is equal to $1.70. Okay, so that's the difference. All right, there you go. Question 14. A talent show, 23 participants invited either 1, 2, or 3 guests. The number of participants who invited 1 guest to those who invited 2 guests was 2:1. There were 44 guests altogether. Find the number of participants who invited 3 guests. So this question is a little bit hard, but we are going to use this assumption method. However, if you are thinking assumption method can only have a difference between 2 groups, then you are right. But the thing is that we have 2 groups over here. So the 2 groups are, number 1, the number of participants who invited 3 guests. So we just here put 3 guests inside this second group. So what does the first group have? The first group is actually both the 1 plus 2 guests. The reason is because in this statement over here, it says that participants who invited 1 guest to 2 guests was 2:1. So that means this is one group, and the 3 guests which we are looking for is the other group. So first thing first, step 1 is to create the assumed total, meaning we want to find the total number of guests if every participant invited 3 guests. So we know that the total number of participants is 23. So we will just have 23 times 3, and this will give us a total of 69 guests. So step 2 is where it gets tricky. So step 2 is to find the difference. So it's easy because if you know the assumption method, the difference of the total is basically the assumed total minus the actual total, which is equal to 25. As what you see over here. So we just minus the assumed total guests, which is 69, and the actual total guests, which is 44. What about the difference of value? So the difference of value is basically from the question, we know that the first group is 1 plus 2 guests. So then that means the ratio who invited 1 guest to 2 guests is 2:1. Therefore, one group or number of participants in the first group over here will be 3. Then after that, one group of assumed guests. So if we assume the number of guests in first group, if all invited 3, is basically 3 times 3 is equal to 9. Okay, so now the next thing is, what is the actual number of guests in the first group? So remember, 1 guest is 2, or the participant who invited 1 guest is the ratio of 2. That means we will just have to multiply 2 times 1, okay, and then we have to add. So the next one is who invited 2 guests was 1. So that means 1 times 2. This will become 4. Therefore, the difference per group would then be equal to 9 minus 4, which is 5. Lastly, we have step 4, which is to divide. So we divide the difference of total, which is 25 that we calculated earlier. So this is the difference of total, 25, divided by the difference per value or difference per group, which is 5 over here. And this will give us 5. So now we divide. Last step is to solve, right? So that means we know that this 5 is the number of the first group over here. So the participants who invited 1 or 2 guests, which is in the first group, will then be 5 times bracket 2 plus 1. Because in the ratio, number of participants is 2:1. So 5 times 2 plus 1, which is 15. Then from there, we can get the participants who invited 3 guests, because we know the total number of guests is, the total number of participants is 23, and minus 15, this will give us 8. All right, there you go. So that's for question 14. Question 15, Bala had 120 more stamps than Charles in at first. Each of them gave Ali some of their stamps. The number of stamps Charles gave Ali was 30% of stamps Bala had at first. The number of stamps Bala gave to Ali was 3/5 of the number of stamps Charles had at first. Both Bala and Charles had an equal number of stamps left. How many stamps did Bala have at first? So this question might be a little confusing. So let's go through it step by step. So let's go through the first sentence over here. Bala had 120 more stamps than Charles at first. So that means Bala is equal to Charles plus 120. Pretty straightforward, right? So Charles will just be Charles. Then you have all of these other sentences that can be a bit confusing. So the thing is, what we need to know is we understand that Charles gave to Ali a percentage of the stamps Bala had at first. Then it goes the same with Bala. Bala gave Ali 3/5 of the number of stamps Charles had at first. So if I were to write this down, if I were to summarize this statement over here, it says here Charles gave away 30% of Bala, right? Then Bala gave away 3/5 of Charles. So essentially, this is what it is summarized to. You can technically ignore Ali because they're just giving away to somebody. So if I were to simplify the percentage into a fraction, what would this be? 30 out of 100 of Bala. If we were to simplify even further, then this will be 3 out of 10 of Bala. So essentially, Charles gave away 3/10 of what Bala have at first. Then Bala gave 3/5 of what Charles have at first. So then we can actually, in a way, create a starting point for Bala and Charles. So that means since we have 10 and we have 5, we technically use the denominators 5 and 10 over here to get the number of units of how many Charles have at first. So that means we can write down, let 10 units be number of stamps Charles have at first. So that means Bala will be 10 units plus 120, and then Charles will be equal to 10 units. All right. So once we have this start, then it's actually easier for us to calculate how much they gave away. So for Charles, we know that he gave away 30% of Bala. So we can just put in the equation. And the thing is that if you don't know how to do this, then this will be quite confusing. So essentially, we actually change the 30% to 3 out of 10 of Bala. So we can change this to 3 out of 10. And then when you multiply the brackets, because Bala is altogether 10 units plus 120, if you don't put the brackets, then you will have the wrong answer. So common mistake is 3 out of 10 times 10 units plus 120. So that means we only have 3/10 of the 10 unit, but we actually need to multiply the 3/10 to the 120 stamps that we have over here. So it will then look something like this, where we have 3 out of 10 times 120. And this will give us 3 units plus 36. So this is how many Charles gave away. 3 units plus 36. Now the thing is, how much did Charles is left with? Because in the question, we know that both Bala and Charles had an equal number of stems left. So that means 10 units, which is what Charles have at first, minus 3 units plus 36. So why we minus is because when you have a minus inside the brackets of a plus, then we actually have to convert it into a minus as well. So we will just minus 36, and this will give us 7 units and 36. So now we have Charles left. The next one is we need to figure out how much Bala have left. So we know that Bala gave away 3/5 of Charles, which we know Charles is 10 units. So 3/5 of 10 units is essentially 6 units. Then what is Bala left with? It's basically 10 units minus 10 units plus 120 minus 6 units, and this will give us 4 units plus 120. This case over here. All right, so since Bala and Charles had an equal number of stems left, that means to simplify it, Bala left is equal to Charles left. Do we know what are the two values for Bala left and Charles left? Yes, we do. You see here, 7 units minus 36 is Charles. Then for Bala left is 4 units plus 120. So if you were to boil it down to 1 unit, you will see that 3 units is equal to 156, and then 1 unit will then be 156 divided by 3, and this will give us 52. So now we know what is 1 unit. The next thing is we want to know how much Bala have at first. So if you were to go all the way up, Bala at first has 10 units plus 120. So that means we will just multiply 10 times 52 plus 120, and this will give us 640. So that's how you answer question number 15. Question 16a. The water tank below is made up of 3 rectangular cuboids joined together. At first, the tank was filled with 1,800 milliliters of water. Both taps were turned on for 2 minutes. Tap A flowed at 1.2 liters per minute, while Tap B flowed at 2 liters per minute. What was the total volume of water in the tank at the end of the 2 minutes? So we know that at first, the tank is 1,800 milliliters, which is essentially 1,800 and then divided by 1,000, which is 1.8 liters. Then from there, tap A, in 2 minutes, it's basically 2 times 1.2 liters, which is 2.4 liters. Then for tap B, this will be 2 times 2 liters, which is 4 liters. Therefore, the total volume of water in the tank is basically 1.8 plus 2.4 plus 4, which in this case is equal to 8.2 liters. Okay, there you go, 8.2. Question 16, part B. The water tank below is made up of 3 rectangular cuboids joined together. At first, the tank was filled with 1,800 milliliters of water. Both taps were turned on for 2 minutes. Tap A flowed at 1.2 liters per minute. Tap B flowed at 2 liters per minute. What was the height of the tank in the end? So earlier in the part, we actually calculated the total volume of water, which in this case is 8.2 liters. So the thing is, to solve this kind of question, we need to first figure out what is the total volume of this base rectangle over here. Or I would say the bottom rectangle or bottom cuboid. So the bottom cuboid over here is length times breadth times height, which in this case is basically 50 times 10 times 13. And this will be 6,500 centimeter cube. So the thing is that the bottom cuboid over here is filled up to the brim because the total volume that we have is 8.2 liters. So 8.2 liters, how many centimeters cube is it? It's 8,200. So that means there will be some water in A and some water in B as well because it's more than 6,500. Therefore, the volume of water in tank A and tank B will then be equal to 8,200 minus 6,500, which is equal to 1,700. And what is over here? And it has a certain height. So this requires some, I would say, thinking, because when you have full of water, the water will always be the same height as what we see over here when it's overflown. Therefore, since they will be the same height, we can say that the height for both tank A and tank B will be 1 unit, as what you see over here. So if we were to zoom out a bit, you see that both tank A and tank B, okay, it's not tank A and tank B, but you know tank A and tank B, so tank A and tank B both have the same height as what we see over here. So to get the height of the water, we will then need to figure out what is 1 unit for the height and then plus 13 centimeters to get the answer. So how do we do that? First thing is, since we know 1 unit is the height of tank A and tank B, that means we can get the total volume of tank A. But first, for tank A over here, so this is tab A, so let me write here A. So this is A and this is B. So for A over here, how do we get the volume of tank A? So first, we can get the base area over here. So how do we get this base area? So we know the length is 12 centimeters, but do we know the breadth over here? So the breadth actually is shown inside this figure, which is 10 centimeters. So this 10 centimeters breadth is the same for B also, but we are calculating for A. So it's the same, 10 centimeters. So since we know A's length is 12 and A's breadth is 10, therefore we can get base area for tank A, which is equal to 120. Now we can calculate the volume of water in tank A, which is basically, in this case, base area times height, which is 120 centimeters square times 1 unit, and the total volume of tank A will be 120 units. So we are going to do the same with tank B. So tank B, we have the breadth as 10 and the length over here is not 12, it is actually 5. So we're going to do the same process as well. So the base area for tank B is 50, and then that means the tank volume in terms of units would then be base area times height, which is 50 times 1 unit, which is equal to 50 units. Therefore, we can calculate the total volume of tank A and tank B in units, which is 120 plus 50. So earlier, let me just put in the units. So earlier for the volume of tank A is 120 units and then tank B is 15 units. So if we add them up, this will be 170 units. We also know the total volume of tank A and tank B in centimeter cube, which is 1700 centimeter cube as well. So that means since tank A and tank B in units 170 units and total volume for tank A and tank B is 1700, then we can actually create an equation where 170 units is equal to 1700 centimeter cube. Therefore, 1 unit would then be equal to 1700 divided by 170, and this will give us 10 centimeters, right? Okay, but we won't put centimeter cube, but yeah, there you go. So 1 unit over here is actually 10 centimeters. But the thing is 10 centimeters the answer? No, because we need to find the height of the water in the tank in the end, which is this whole thing over here. Therefore, the height of water tank is basically 13 plus 10. And this will give us 23. There you go. So that's the answer to this question. Question 17a. Can build a racetrack for toy cars by using 3 different rectangular pieces and 10 identical curved pieces. A curved piece is as shown in the figure 1. The width of the racetrack is 7 centimeters. Find the length of X. Okay, so we have X over here. So I'm going to highlight in red. So we can just point or draw out some lines so it's easier for us to see. So let's first draw this blue line from 15 to the top of line X over here. Okay, then this 15 centimeters cut off somewhere here. Now, how do we then find the rest of the lines that you see over here? Okay, first thing is we know that this whole, I would say, quarter circle is basically identical. Then we also can figure out what this radius of this quarter circle is. If we know the radius of the quarter circle, then we can actually get it for these other two lengths as what you see over here. So the radius, if we add 7 centimeters, So if we find 2 of these radius, then we can find the total length of x in red. So do we see any clues from this picture? If you were to guess this 14 centimeters over here, then you are right. This 14 centimeter comprises of 2 quarter circles. Let me highlight it in green. Okay, I didn't really highlight in green, but basically this inner, what do you call this, inner semicircle over here, which is this part, is 14 centimeters. So we know that the radius, the diameter is 14 centimeters. So that means the radius for this is equal to 14 divided by 2. So this thing over here will then be equal to 7. So since this radius of this small little semicircle or even quarter circle is 7, that means we actually can have this length as 7, because the radius of this semicircle will always be 7 no matter where it's being pointed at. So since this is 7, therefore this part over here is also 7, and this part is also 7. Therefore, if we were to add all of this up, so we know that this part is 15, yeah, from here. Now we just need to calculate the purple part, which is basically, in this case, 7, and 7 from the width of the track, and also 7. So that means this remaining part is actually 21. That's what you see over here. Therefore, if we were to add the total length 15 and 21, then it's equal to x. So therefore, the length of x over here will be 36 centimeters. So question 17b, can build a racetrack for toy cars by using 3 different rectangular pieces and 10 identical curved pieces. A curved piece is shown in figure 1. The width of the racetrack is 7 centimeters. Find the area of the entire track. So we have gone through how to solve for x, but just to give a simple recap, we essentially get all of the different lengths from the other parts of the racetrack. So in this case, if we were to draw a line across, you can see that we have 15 centimeters. Then to find this length over here, we will then need to basically get the radius of this quarter circle. Okay, because this radius of the quarter circle will always be the same no matter how it looks. So if we were to draw out over here, this is 1 quarter circle radius. And then we also have the 7 centimeters here as well. And then we have another quarter circle radius over here as well. So how do we get the quarter circle radius? If you were to look around the racetrack, you could see that there is a hint. So if you saw the hint, then you got this correct, which is basically this semicircle over here is actually 2 quarter circles, one, and then another one, just like this over here. Then we know that this part is 14 centimeters. So that means half of this 14 centimeters will then be equal to 7. So that means this quarter circle radius is 7, because like I said earlier, that the radius will not change no matter where it is pointing towards to. Therefore, this 7 over here will also be this 7 and this 7 as well, which means that this length is 7, this length is 7, and this length is also 7 from the width of the racetrack as what we see over here. So if you were to add them up, then this will be 36. So to get the area, we have to find a couple of things. So first, we have a couple of rectangles. The first rectangle that we want to find, I think we can immediately do, is this rectangle over here. Since we know this is 36, therefore it's basically 36 times 7, and this will be equal to 252. The next part is we want to find another rectangle. Which rectangle do we want to find? I think the next easiest one is this green rectangle. So this green rectangle will then be length of 15 and the breadth is 7, and this will be equal to 105 centimeters square. And then lastly, we have this last rectangle over here. So let's make it orange. So what is the length of this rectangle? So the length of this rectangle is this part. So we have 1 and we also have 2. That's what we see over here. Okay, so to get the length of this rectangle, we know that this is 7. So that means this is 7. And we know that the thickness of the racetrack or the width of the racetrack is 7 as well. And then this is also a quarter circle. That's what you see over here. So therefore, the length of this is basically 7 times 3, which is equal to 21. So this over here is 21. Therefore, the orange rectangle over here is 21 times 7, and this will give us 147. Okay, then the last part will then be we want to get the number of these identical curved pieces over here. So let's first find out the area of one curved pieces, or in this case, these curved pieces is basically the big quarter circle minus small quarter circle. So the big quarter circle, that's what you see over here in this, I will say purple, is basically 7. Okay, so we know that the inner part is 7 and the outer part is also 7. So this is what I mean. So these are both 7s. So that means for this big 1/4 circle, the radius is 14 centimeters. Therefore, for the big quarter circle area will then be 1/4 times pi times radius, which in this case 1/4 times 22 out of 7 times 14 times 14, and this will give us 154. Then for the small circle area, since we know the small circle area radius, small circle, quarter circle is essentially 7, then we will just have this be 7 times 7, and this will give us 38.5. Therefore, the area of the one curved pieces will then be equal to big 1/4 circle is 154 minus the small 1/4 circle 38.5, and this will be equal to 115.5. Okay, so we need to find the number of curved pieces. So let's put it down. So we have 1 curved pieces, we have 2, we have 3, and we have 4, 5, this is 6, this is 7, this is 8, this is 9, and lastly we have 10. So that means the total area of track, it's basically 10 times the curved pieces plus all the rectangles, which is the green rectangle plus orange rectangle plus blue rectangle. So let's add them up. So this will be 10 times 115.5 plus green rectangle, which is 105, plus orange rectangle, which is 147, plus the blue rectangle, purple rectangle. I'm going to put it blue. Blue rectangle will be 252. Okay, and the final answer will then be equal to 1,659 centimeters square. Right, there you go. So that's the answer. So that's it. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want more of this kind of video, subscribe down below. Comment down what other questions you want me to go through next. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.